You know what? I've come to a realisation over the past few days that retro gaming just isn't that fun. It's just got that something missing, like there's no real substance to it. I think the main thing it needs is triangles. 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 Oh. Triangles. 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 Procedural door frame touching. Oh, triangles. 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 Procedural foot placement. Triangles. 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 So Epic Games has given us a taste of what the PS5 is going to look like with their Unreal Engine. And the problem with that is that Unreal tech demos always seem to be all about the graphics, not really much gameplay in there. But then when you look back at the previous tech demos that Unreal has revealed, you realise that there were never any actual games to come out that utilise these graphical capabilities to the maximum and to the extent that they show in these tech demos. But I want to go through this latest tech demo bit by bit because for me it gave off one of those really awkward, cringeworthy dev speak kind of vibes that we get a lot from developer interviews and stuff, where they're really talking about their game as if it's doing something completely new and different that you'd never even dream of a game doing, when really all it's doing is increasing the graphical fidelity. And this was also presented, I'm sure purposely, as if someone actually had a controller in their hand and was playing an actual game. And I think, judging by what we're going to see, that's a bit dishonest. I may be a bit annoyed in this video, and sorry in advance if I seem a bit angry, but I'm getting quite tired of this whole idea that we have to move on to the next generation when the changes are so incremental, and I don't think that we're focusing on the right things here. These people from Epic Games are definitely not focusing on the right thing.
A few years ago, we got together as a team and brainstormed where we thought we could push forward the state-of-the-art in real-time graphics. There were two key areas that stood out. The first, dynamic global illumination. Beautiful bounce lighting, instantaneously.
So first I'd like to point out how lame it is that these guys are acting as if this is just like a casual conversation between them two. He's like nodding along as if this wasn't all incredibly scripted and they'd worked out exactly what they were going to say beforehand.
And we call this new technology Nanite. Here is the future of Unreal Engine running live on a PlayStation 5.
Awesome. Let's take a look at it.
Awesome, let's take a look at it. I had no idea that this was coming. So I know this is probably primarily aimed at game developers rather than game players, but I think the way they're presenting this right off the bat makes them look a bit like snake oil salesmen. And also, as we'll see from the rest of the video, the extreme focus on graphics kind of, makes a mockery of the idea of game design, in my opinion, because surely Epic Games should be proud of the development tools that they've implemented into the Unreal Engine as well, and showing how they can easily implement all these gameplay ideas into people's games. But instead...
And thanks to virtual texturing, they all use 8K textures as well. Nanite can render an insane number of triangles very quickly. There are over 1 billion triangles of source geometry in each frame that Nanite crunches down losslessly to around 20 million drawn triangles.
Okay, so they're using extremely highly detailed textures and models here, that's clear to see. However, why are we going back once again to a brown desert area with rocks and sand everywhere? Come on, we can add a bit of colour into this for once, please. Unless you're going up and looking really closely at these details, this doesn't make anything about the level design or the art direction of this environment interesting, really. It's no more interesting than this picture of sand.
Okay, let's keep going.
Yes, let's keep going down this extremely linear path. And one thing to note about game engines is that the more linear the path and the more opportunities you have to guide the player in a certain direction and hide objects that haven't yet been rendered in, the more triangles and the more high resolution textures you can fit into a scene like this. So, of course, with it being this heavily structured, you're going to be able to get this many triangles in. I'd like to see how this plays out in a more open world game or a game with actual level design.
We've made some great additions to our audio system as well. Convolution Reverb allows us to measure reverberation characteristics of real spaces, like actual caves that we sampled, and reproduce them in virtual spaces.
So Convolution Reverb is kind of a standard audio design technique that people use. And if you were creating your own environments, you would use a virtual reverb space that matches your environment. This is something that would have to be implemented by the sound designer into pretty much any engine, unless you were just using their presets, which I'm sure you could get Convolution Reverb presets from the internet anyway. But again, this feels a bit weird presenting something that's not new in the slightest as if it's this brand new technology. And once again, in a highly scripted, highly structured game such as this, you could easily tailor the audio however you want for each specific scenario.
All of this adds up to a more immersive experience.
Notice how he said a more immersive experience right before the character did one of those really boring, time-wasting, fancy animations where the character squeezes through a gap. And then bats come literally out of thin air or a wall right beside her. We saw that this was an enclosed space above, like there was rocks that pretty much closed off the area above. They just materialise out of nowhere. That's not immersive, that's just more incredibly scripted bullshit.
This swarm of bats was created with our Niagara effects system. Particles in Niagara can now talk to one another and understand their environment like never before.
Particle effects can now talk to each other and understand their environment like never before. I'd love to know what that actually means.
We've also added a ton of new functionality to run fluid simulations like you see in the water below.
Now this is something I would really be interested in seeing more of. Fluid simulation, I love water in games. I love it when it looks realistic. One of my favourite games is called From Dust, and that is basically a liquid simulation sort of sandbox game where you have to manipulate the environment and it's all physics based. This literally shows us nothing. You've got a character walking through a shallow puddle and there are a few ripples, and literally Uncharted did that. It was achievable on the PS3. Why not show us a puzzle that you've designed, i.e. gameplay, and, see how the water could be manipulated to, solve the puzzle maybe, instead of just having a character walking through a linear path once again.
Now that the environment is so complex, we've needed to greatly improve our animation systems to adapt. We've added predictive foot placement and motion warping, which dynamically modifies IK and body position to look more natural.
Okay, predictive foot placement. Interesting on the surface, but let's rewind a little bit. Let's look at how, once again, the level has been designed. It clearly shows a linear path going all the way up. So this climbing is essentially the exact same system we've had in Tomb Raider and Uncharted for years and years. Systems that have got so incredibly boring and tedious, and I really don't want them to be in any other game ever again. So what he is saying would be quite impressive if we had a free-form climbing system. If he'd said, we've designed a free-form climbing system that can be implemented into any game. You can design your levels and the character will free climb as long as, it looks realistic in terms of the geometry. And you can maybe program certain paths that extend like a net over a certain area rather than just having a limited path. That's good game design. This isn't anything, it's just showing us more stuff that we've seen before.
For the character to more realistically interact with the environment, we've added the ability to trigger seamless contextual animation events, like her hand on the door.
Looks promising.
See, I can't handle it. Seamless contextual animation events. She goes through a door, there's a scripted animation event where she puts her hand on the door. We don't see anything like this again, the entire demo. Again, it would have been impressive if we'd have seen her reaching out for certain things, maybe, depending if she got too close to a wall, she puts her hand up. But I feel like I'm repeating myself here. We've seen this in so many games. I believe, original Tomb Raider, you run up to a wall, she goes, oof, and lifts her hand up to press against the wall. I feel like the way this guy is speaking, it's like we should be in absolute awe of a feature that has been in game design for years and years. And to phrase it the way he does, it just seems so disingenuous. You could apply that to absolutely anything. When we were developing Rugrats Search for Reptar on the PlayStation, we developed a seamless contextual bouncy ball physics system, which we call Minerva. The ball itself is made up of 10 quadrillion triangles, and with our new dynamic context-sensitive collision detection system, the ball can detect when it's touching other objects in the geometry. The triangles of the ball push in on themselves and then propel outwards, which then trajectorizes the ball across from the position it was in. Bollocks.
Dynamic GI is amazing, not just for speeding up iteration, but also for its impact on gameplay. Dynamic illumination means specular as well, which you can see on all the metal surfaces. You can even see the Niagara-powered bugs reacting to the light.
So again, dynamic lighting's really cool. I love dynamic lighting. But saying that this can add to the gameplay is, again, a bit disingenuous. Yeah, the insects moving and reacting to the light is cool, but I can name 2 games off the top of my head that do a similar thing. One is Alone in the Dark Inferno on the PS3, where you had to either shine a light or set fire to these kind of pulsating dark creatures to allow you to pass. And the other is a more recent game. I think it's called Plague Tale Innocence, if I'm thinking of the right one. You have to do a similar thing to move rats out of the way.
Remember we mentioned high poly assets? This statue was imported directly from ZBrush and is more than 33 million triangles.
Again, I'm looking forward to seeing this kind of thing in a non-incredibly scripted environment with non-static objects around, with more open and expansive level design. And not even open world, just intricate level design like we used to have in games, because that's where the gameplay came from, was navigating these levels. This tech demo reminds me, and a lot of people have been saying the same thing, of the later Tomb Raider games, the recent Tomb Raider games, where everything's just a linear path and it's just such a chore climbing everywhere. And, all these arduous animations that look really good, but are just boring to watch after doing them hundreds of times. Jeff Keighley tweeted out after this was shown, "Is everyone excited about the future of gaming? If an extremely marginal improvement in graphics is all that the next generation of gaming can offer, then this is pretty much exactly the kind of thing I was talking about in my previous video when they revealed all the hardware specs of the PS5. We're focusing far too much on how things look and not enough on actual gameplay and making games fun and innovative. And that's why I found this Unreal tech demo to be unreally boring." Thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry again for being a bit angry in this video, but this kind of stuff annoys me. And hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.